Hello and welcome to another episode of The Culture of Value. My name is Troy Scheer. I'm your host. I am with Binary Automotive Solutions and Binary Marketing Solutions. Today we have our guest is Colin Carasquillo. Colin is the digital marketing manager with Nielsen Automotive Group and also a host of a podcast. So we're working together on the podcast. Colin's on the Xperia Marketing podcast. So I had a chance to be on his podcast the other day and just had to return the invitation after all of our conversations because it was probably one of the most entertaining and fun podcasts I've been on. So we'll have to make sure that I share that too here.
Listen, Troy, thank you. Hey, first off, thank you for having me on. Yes, and we had a blast. So my co-host, Matt Wilson, and I absolutely enjoyed to the utmost degree having you on the Xperia Marketing podcast. And thank you for having me on. So we're brothers from another mother in terms of the podcasting world.
Absolutely. And it's like being able to share the information and do that. That's what I think you and I are both on that same wavelength there too, of just getting as much information out to people as possible to help them in their personal and especially professional lives, but in their personal lives also, because I think a lot that we talk about can be translated into what we do personally in our lives as well. So today, this is kind of something we talked a little bit about on our podcast and when I was with you and just some of the discussions we've had, but we're going to be talking about omnichannel and specifically the I in omnichannel. So I'm going to let you kind of talk to that and help people understand what omnichannel is, because I think some people sometimes get that confused with multi-channel marketing.
Sure.
So I'll let you kind of just take over from there and we'll roll.
Listen, so I'd first have to say, I'm going to preface it with this. This is not my brainchild, but I thought that this was such a great, philosophy and statement. This statement was actually said by a gentleman named David O'Brien, who is the president and CEO of a company called Quantum 5. And Quantum 5 is actually an automotive training company. So they're really taking training to the next level. I'd highly recommend that you have him on your show, just because what he talks about is exactly that, building the culture of value within the dealership internally, right? So sales operations and things like that. But ultimately, by doing that, you're then going to enhance or create this culture of value for the customer, right? So externally. So this gentleman, David O'Brien, had said on our most recent episode of Xperia Marketing, you can't start thinking about omni-channel marketing or omni-channel operations, which I will define for you guys, until you think about the I in omni-channel. So to bring it back to your initial question, the difference between omni-channel and multi-channel is this. Let's talk about it from a perspective of a customer. Originally, people, dealers, advertisers said, hey, the customer's journey is linear, right? Each customer does this thing. They'll go to Google, they'll search, they'll click on our dealer website, they're going to submit a lead, then we're going to call them up 1,000,000 times, and we're going to ultimately sell them a car. That's the linear journey.
And that's how everybody does it, right?
Right. So that is so far from what today's reality is. And that idea needs to go bye-bye. So just like 2020, let's get rid of that thought process about a linear customer journey. And let's start thinking about it from this omni-channel perspective. The way you shop for a car, the way I shop for a car, the way that our listeners shop for cars are all completely different. And this is something that you and I had discussed on our great episode of Xperia Marketing. So with that, the omni-channel approach states this, that you as a dealer or as an advertiser need to, right? You need to provide a seamless experience to your potential customers across every single channel. And when I say channel, I mean advertising channels. So in your marketing mix, right? So the messaging all needs to be consistent. You need to make sure that you're putting it out there at the right place, the right time, the right device, so on and so forth. And that when the customer ultimately gets further and further down the purchase funnel, right? So they move from the awareness stage to considerations, ultimately this conversion or purchase stage, that when they get to your dealership website, which is where we want them to go, that they're seeing the same experience or messaging across the board, right? So, I mean, does that make sense versus, that linear journey, omni-channel, and then multi-channel, and then ultimately with multi-channel, it's basically everything siloed, right? So omni-channel is saying things need to work together holistically, synergistically, whereas multi-channel is, oh yeah, as a dealer, I have a search engine marketing campaign going. I have my digital display going. I have my retargeting going, but none of it is by the same vendor or none of it works together. Would you say that's a good explanation for our listeners?
I think you could not have put it any better.
Thank you.
It's that is as clear, it's working within the holistic and strategic picture versus working in a vacuum.
Right. Right. So then the idea behind the I in Omnichannel is this, and let's continue looking at it from a marketing perspective, right? Because I am a marketing director for the automotive group, the Nielsen Automotive Group. And what I wanted to do differently on your show is actually bring that marketing kind of approach into it. So here's something that we do at Nielsen, or actually it's an opportunity for improvement for us, but I want to share it because I think other dealers could also benefit from this discussion and what we're about to talk about. So
Absolutely.
For us here at Nielsen, I see a tremendous opportunity for improvement is better education and communication with what digital advertising strategies we currently have in place, as well as all the technology that we have to ensure that the customer is having this exceptional customer experience at our dealerships. There needs to be better communication amongst all of the management teams. And then in turn, the management teams will disseminate that information out to their sales staff, which is the lifeblood of our organization in terms of looking at car sales, right? Without sales staff, you're not going to sell many cars. Is that fair to say?
I think we can all agree on that.
So
we may not agree on much, but we can agree on that.
We can agree on that, and that's good. And so, with us, the way that we look at it, or the way that I look at it, is the I in Omnichannel becomes this. Well, a marketing director or your ad agency has all of these different advertising strategies in place. And those advertising strategies are meant to generate opportunities for sales. However, if you're not educating your team on what those advertising strategies are, what the messaging is, what tools you have in place to ultimately convert that customer when they get to your dealership's website, it's not going to work. So how do you instill in your teams that they are their respective eyes in Omnichannel, right? As a salesperson, my eye in Omnichannel would be this. Hey, let me talk to my marketing director and let me see what type of digital retailing tool I might have on my website. Let me see what type of chat tool I might have on my website. Let me see what kind of functionalities I have with text messaging, right? But they're placing themselves, taking onus and responsibility of the technology that's out there to ensure that their eye is fulfilling what omnichannel actually means. And when you do that, you're going to have more opportunities for sales. Trust me, because that's how your customer is shopping, right? And you're facilitating that seamless transaction or transition between what happens online with the customer and ultimately the conversion at your brick and mortar dealership.
No, and like you say, it's that person being able to take ownership of all of those things and not just kind of wait for them to happen, or, well, I know that they're doing something out there, but not really sure what. And I think that was, as you talk about too, omni-channel also is not just all of the digital channels. It's also that brick and mortar of when you come in, how does that salesperson engage with you based upon all the messages that the potential customer has been seeing digitally. So if you don't know as the salesperson kind of what's going on and what the messaging is, you're going to be kind of creating that interruption in the flow of trying to close that sale, because now all of a sudden your customer's like, well, wait a minute, you don't know about this or whatever, whatever potential promotion or program or whatever it may be.
Excuse me.
that you have been as a dealership as a whole presenting. And now if your salespeople don't get it, there's really a disconnect there for them.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, just to reiterate, what I'm talking about here is this. We talk about creating these frictionless experiences. Okay. We want to go compete with the Vrooms and Carvanas and CarMaxes of the world. We want to compete with the Amazons of the world. First of all, Amazon doesn't even sell cars, but what we can do is we can learn from Amazon and those other companies. We should look at it this way. You look at how they make the process as frictionless as possible. Okay. As dealers, we start thinking, let's provide people with all this technology. digital retailing tools, chat, text messaging, all of these things, artificial intelligence, right? So many buzzwords that we could talk about. And I know you have an extensive knowledge of it. I know you do. So we could talk about all those things. But the thing is this, and I went on record saying this, months ago, but I just want to drive it home, because by providing those tools, thinking that we're going to make the process frictionless, we're actually creating more friction, because we're doing our people the disservice of not telling them or teaching them how to properly utilize those tools, that technology, right? So break it down to its most simplest form for a dealer to understand. I, Colin Carasquillo, I'm a customer on your website. I see a vehicle I'm interested in. You have a nice little digital retailing tool. I start calculating my payments. Okay. I build out my payments. I complete the deal. I have to unlock pricing by submitting my information. All right. So let's say I submit my information. Now the lead routes to the dealer CRM. I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get a response back. That's going to be a canned email response. It's going to say, we've received your inquiry. How can we assist you today? And that canned response is going to completely disregard the fact that I already picked my vehicle, already built out my payments, already valued my trade. Basically, all I need to do is come to the dealership, touch, smell, test drive the vehicle, and then I want out. Then I want to buy this thing and be done with it. So that's what I'm talking about by saying we just need to really ensure, or this culture of value, which I love the whole idea behind the podcast, that you're instilling that in your teams from a operational and marketing perspective. Really instill that culture that, hey, this is how a customer is doing business. This is how we need to adapt to what the customer wants. And by us adapting, it's going to make us better. We're going to get more opportunities for sales. We're going to close more deals. It's really not rocket science, but we're still so, against adopting a new way of doing things. You need to disrupt what you're doing and try something new for success, right?
It completely. And I think the thing is too, is at this point in time, digital, the points of digital also is to help save time and do, if you start not creating, like you said, friction points in places that you were trying to get rid of them, to reduce the time spent, because I think that's one of the big things that we see as a customer. We can make more money. We can't make more time. And
Right.
when you start taking up my time with, silly things that you should know better already, because if you've got the information and you're not using it, well, shame on you for not being more prepared to engage with me as a customer. So it's like, that's what I want to see. I'll pay more for something to have,
Right.
you reduce my time spent on acquiring whatever product or service that is. Yeah, that's worth my time to spend a little more, because, hey, I know you value my time. Well, then obviously you're conducting business and I know you need to make money. So and I don't think this is just me. I think a lot of people would say the same thing. You value my time. I'm going to value you as a brand and continue to do business with you. And that's where those tools have to be utilized to save that time, not just because to have them there for the sake of, wow, what's the next cool, shiny little new tool or object that you can have.
Yeah, I think dealers fall into that trap. It's that new shiny tool syndrome, right? So you see it and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to have this because, X, Y, and Z thought leaders, forward thinkers in the industry are saying, hey, this is the next best thing. Yes, that's potentially something you want to look at, this new shiny tool. But I'll be damned if I don't say this now. You can get all the new shiny tools in the world, but if you don't have a process in place to utilize those new shiny tools,
Absolutely.
they suck.
Absolutely.
Then they're not going to work for you. Okay.
Completely agreed. It's one of those things where, because you think about it in marketing, when we say, we're getting new tools thrown at us of some sort every day,
left and right.
And you can only use so many. So it's really a matter of, that's where you got to take a little bit of time on your own as a general manager or a dealership principal, and understand how are these tools going to best work with the staff that I have, so that's, from a user friendliness standpoint and all of those things, because some of these things are complex to the point where it's like, I've even seen some like I see what it's trying to do, but it takes me, a week just to grasp it at all.
Right.
And it's sometimes because if it's harder and creates more friction for the salesperson as well, they're just not going to use it. So you really have to work and be concentrated, as you said, and have a true process in place and understand this is what we're trying to achieve, and then pull that tool set together to do that. It's not,
Yeah.
grab your tools and then go, okay, well, what can we do with this?
Right. No, I mean here, and I apologize if this is bad because it really is on the fly, but the whole analogy becomes this. If you're going to a construction site or a work site or a job, okay, you don't bring all of the tools to the job and say like, oh, I might need this, this, and this. And yeah, it's good if you do end up needing it because you'll have the tool. But if with the job in mind, don't you actually bring the required tool set to the job? I'm not a construction guy. I'm not. All right. But the whole idea is just that. Why are you saying, let me, bring everything in the kitchen sink to the table when in reality, you don't need all of that. You just need the tools, a certain tool in your ecosystem or certain tools in your ecosystem. You need to have a good grasp of how those tools work and how you can leverage those tools both internally for your dealer staff, but then also look at it externally. How's a customer going to leverage these tools? And then you go from there. So, I mean, I think you had actually on our episode, you brought up a really great point, and it's just going back to your experience. You just bought a car from Carvana, right? I mean, the whole idea was that experience to you was super easy. I mean, and so as a result, I think a lot of what you did in that experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was super easy because it was a seamless, frictionless experience.
And very much so. And again, there, when you look at it, it wasn't completely devoid of human interaction.
Right.
There was still the phone call and, hey, walk me through and help me if I've got some questions I need answered. The young lady couldn't have been more helpful. Here's a few things I need, and away we go. And I think those are still things that even your salespeople at a brick and mortar location can still be very valuable at, to answer questions and do those things. It's really, you have to look at meeting your prospective customers where they are. There are going to be those that want to come into the dealership and touch and feel and take the test drive and do all those things. But then you also have the others, i.e. Carvana, who, hey, now you've got this, and then you have 7 days to decide, hey, do I like it or not? And you get to, the real feel of not just driving around the block a few times, but utilizing it. So I think that's where we've got to look at all of these things. And really, again, as each dealership needs to focus on, what am I trying to achieve in my brand promise for my customer? If you don't have that established, all of the other things really don't. Again, you've got tools that you don't know how to use, or that you're using for a purpose that is completely off from what your brand promise is.
Right. So then those tools don't matter. And I think what you just said, right? So with your Carvana experience, that there was still that human touch to it. And I think that's a perfect, kind of come full circle, which, I love doing, but come full circle with, that's the I in Omnichannel. Okay. So here is a business that is gaining success, that's gaining traction, right? Dealers are taking notice of this business. Customers are taking notice of the way that, a Carvana or a Vroom does business. And we shouldn't see that as a, oh my goodness, here's this challenger that's going to, eat our lunch. We need to say, or badmouth them, all right? We need to say, hey, this is great. It's a space that's becoming more competitive. How do we adapt our processes? But the whole idea with that is that ultimately, those businesses still have that human touch. All right. There's the I in Omnichannel. So how does a dealer then take all of this great technology that's going to allow them to facilitate an awesome car buying experience? Customers are going to love it. Customers are going to rave about it. How do they take that technology? How do they work it into their processes? And how do they make their people, their sales staff, their service and parts personnel, right? Because it only compounds on itself from here. How do they make them feel like they're part of the I in Omnichannel? What is their duty? What is their responsibility? How are they leveraging this technology?
Completely. And that's one of the things too, like you said a while ago, we're not looking anymore at a straight funnel or a very linear process. And you think about, because that was kind of where, from a marketing perspective, at least, I think in the past, that people thought, okay, I got them to the door. Now it's your job to take care of it. But really, when you think of any business, but when you're looking at car dealerships, your whole idea is, okay, now I've got to bring them back into the service drive, because I want to keep them there and continue to generate revenue. I want to provide a great experience there. I want to be able to message. So there are a lot of things omni-channel wise that you can utilize tools after the sale as well, to make sure that that experience continues to be positive well on down the road. And then looking at, okay, now how do I utilize some of these things too to get customer referrals?
Right.
keep bringing
So
things in.
yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. You look at massive players in the space when it comes to advertising, right? So let's talk advertising players. Big one. I don't know if you know this company. It's a little small company, but Facebook. Okay, this company called Facebook, right? Which not many people
Who?
know about, and not many advertisers or auto dealers are advertising on Facebook. But even Facebook in their playbook, okay, their dealer guidebook, or it's the dealer playbook, I believe, talks about a strategy which is customers for life. Okay. Now, a lot of that advertising actually is built around service and declined, ROs or things like that. Someone comes into the dealership. Let's say they need an oil change and a tire rotation. They end up saying no to the tire rotation. And now on Facebook, you can, follow them around with ads showing a discounted tire rotation, whatever the scenario may be. But the whole idea is then building customers for life, okay? Building value into that relationship, keeping that customer in what we talked about on our episode of Experiment Marketing, the lovely infinity loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sales to service and parts, and sales and service and parts, and it goes on until the end of time.
And,
But the
and
fact
again,
of the matter,
seeing how many more you can bring in there with that person
yes,
that's in that infinity
and
loop.
introduce them in.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, when a person has a great experience at the dealership, they're going to talk about it, and most likely, will talk about it on those social channels to families and friends, so on and so forth, which is why it's important. But the whole point is here that Facebook even recommends that you look at a customer for life type of messaging. And the whole idea ties back to what you just said, is that it's not just sales. Okay. Sales is only one little portion of it. And if we literally break it out to what we just did in the infinity loop, let's say it's sales, service, parts. So sales is a third. Okay. Now 2/3, which actually is probably where you end up making most of your revenue in the grand scheme of things in a dealership. 2/3 then becomes service and parts. Okay. So how are your service and parts personnel fitting into that omni-channel experience? Just like what you said, if you left it just at sales, and this is an opportunity for improvement here at our dealer group. Listen, I'm going to be the first one to say that my baby's ugly. Okay. There definitely need to be some things that we need to work on. And I'm happy to address those and say that, hey, there's an opportunity for improvement here. Let's just be real about it. But the thing is, when you look at it and you say as a dealer, okay, I fixed it, or I have a Band-Aid for sales, this is how it's going to work. You're still not completing the full cycle, because what happens when the person gets to service? What happens when the person needs to buy accessories or goes to parts as their vehicle ages? How is that messaging from the marketing perspective tying into everything? And then ultimately, how is that individual, whether it's a service advisor or parts and accessories department individual, how are they fitting in to your whole omni-channel operation and experience?
I completely agree. And this is something just from personal experience too, of having, I won't name dealerships, but
drop names. No,
nah,
I'm just
I don't
kidding.
want, we're not,
I'm just kidding.
I'm not that evil,
No.
but no, in the sense that it was, we had purchased a car for our daughter at a dealership. And, again, it was not the most expeditious process. I mean, we were there for a long time, and, brand new vehicle. And it wasn't, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months down the road where she hit 2 tires, just went, dead on her. They were hit 2 nails and 2 flat tires.
Sounds like you're driving in New Jersey with all those potholes.
But I called to the dealership where we bought the car, and there, it was later in the afternoon, 3:30, something like that. And it was gee, sorry, we can't get you in till later tomorrow. And I'm like, well, she has to have this car to get to school and, all the things. And yep, sorry. I'm like, well, crap.
Right.
So called a competing dealership, same brand. Oh yeah, absolutely. Get her in. We'll, if we have to stay late, we'll get her, make sure she gets in and gets taken care of. So obviously guess when we buy another car of that make, guess where we're going?
Yeah. The dealership that took her in. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's like, so you think about all of the things that you're doing too. And that's why it's so important, the actions that are taken at the dealership themselves, because otherwise that's wasted money, because now you've got the dealership where we bought the car. I'm never going back, so now the money that we're spending on anything else is going to that new dealership and service and all of those things. So money can be greatly wasted too. We look at all of the external marketing elements that Omnichannel presents, but that money can be wasted by just upsetting that one customer, because you think about what it costs to get me in as a customer, and now I'm gone. And, while I'm not saying anything negatively here, I have definitely talked to friends and, family and things, just like we do as people.
Right.
And, so what has that cost that dealership as well? So that's why I say it's the whole marketing. When you start thinking marketing, and that's why, to me, in the one place that I think a lot of businesses across the board, definitely not picking on auto by any means, is that they don't want to invest the time up front for that planning and developing the processes
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what do we want throughout that customer journey, and how does every element of our dealership impact that, from the very first time that somebody sees, your vehicle on a third party site or wherever that first engagement is, all the way through that infinity loop of lifetime. How does each person, because I think sometimes people don't realize how much they are the marketing department. It's not just the one person sitting here that's kind of tasked with implementing everything, but it is all of the people, whether it's an F&I or service or whatever. Everybody in that dealership is part of the marketing team. And when you kind of fail to realize that, it creates a gap in that infinity loop that all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I'm done.
Right.
Because it doesn't take much for somebody with all the options that are out there. It's not like that one dealership is all there is. I think sometimes too that they forget that, there is a lot of competition out there.
Right.
So you've got to be very aware of how you plan and purpose and really train your entire team to understand, like you said, their eye in the omni-channel part, where
Right.
do they fit in? And
Right.
if they don't want to do that, there may be some issues there too from a personnel standpoint that you have to look at and go, is me keeping this one person on the team worth losing potentially, thousands of dollars in revenue down the road?
I think that's something, Troy, when you bring up about money, right? Monies, okay? Dealers do spend a tremendous amount of money on advertising. And a lot of wise people out there say, you shouldn't look at it as an expense. You should look at it as an investment, okay? Your advertising, the fact of the matter is, it is an expense on the balance sheet when all is said and done. And with that, for dealers listening, and I think this is why it's exceptionally important, which is why I just want to go back and kind of drive this point home.
Mm-hmm.
For dealers that are out there listening, right, people, you're essentially spending all this money. And then, yes, if you have an individual in your organization that does not uphold the dealership process, or for that matter, if the dealership process does not exist, okay, that money that you've spent as your investment is not an investment. It is gone, and it is lost money, and it was wasted money, because what you've done is you've done exactly what Troy and I have talked about earlier in the episode here, which is you're trying to make things easier for the customer and ultimately bring more success to your dealership, but without actually focusing on the fundamentals of it, which is the process and the people that are upholding the process. There's no point in spending the money. There's really not. So save yourself the trouble of spending thousands of dollars on X, Y, and Z if you don't know how you're going to use the tool, whatever you're purchasing for X, Y, and Z. Let's put it that way.
I completely agree. This goes back again. I've been in the marketing arena for 24 years now. I look back to the late 90s, and again, obviously different channels and things of that nature. But it actually was pitching a client at one point, and prior to the full pitch, we went in and actually did some secret shopping and realized that, it wouldn't matter what we did to help drive.
It was a lost cause.
Well, no, it was because of the fact that their salespeople were horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really one of those things. And that's what we ultimately told the client, who actually didn't, because I said, you're better off right now taking the money that you would invest into an external marketing advertising campaign
for training.
and train your
Yeah.
salespeople, or get the right salespeople, spend more on whatever you've got to do. Because again, you can drive in, 200 people into the dealership. And if, you only close 2 of them because you've irritated, and somebody within it has irritated and run off the other 180, that's a lot of money walking out the door.
Right.
So I think that's where looking at things, like I said, from a process and planning standpoint, and if you don't have the fundamentals, the blocking and tackling down, don't try to get all crazy. Work and work through that process and understand that you don't want to jump into it midstream.
Yeah, and you bring up another valuable point because you are just full of valuable points. So I do want to make sure that people get these.
I wish my wife thought that.
Oh man, this is our bromance, all right? It's just beginning. With that though, I think from a marketing perspective, what you just said was very important as well. Is that I obviously take my job exceptionally seriously, maybe too seriously sometimes. And that's just because I'm very passionate about it. And I know there's other marketers out there and advertisers that are as passionate about what they do. I know you're one of them. But the whole thing becomes this. You can say, hey, I have the best marketing and advertising plan in place, and we're using all the best, technologies, and we're using all the best strategies to bring low funnel shoppers into our dealership and X, Y, and Z. But the whole thing becomes this, from a marketing perspective, maybe this will help you guys listening out there, and it's something that I think I need to do as well. But Troy, you had touched on this one client of yours, or potential client, that you had done some mystery shopping, okay? And you found that the issue really wasn't the advertising. The issue was that once people got to the dealership's website or ultimately started talking with the staff at the dealership, that the sales staff just was not trained. Right. So they weren't educated enough, whether it was on the product or how to, bring people in or whatever it was. And I know there's a lot of different issues out there with training and so on and so forth. But maybe as marketers, our eye in omnichannel should become more than just generating opportunities for business. What it should actually include also is conducting these analyses of websites and audits and mystery shopping, and I think a lot of marketers probably do that because they want to say, how does my ad, get people to the website? What happens once people are on the website? What's that experience like? But it might be beneficial because I'll tell you, this just happened with us. I was doing some tests, making sure everything looks good on mobile, so on and so forth. I submitted a lead, my information. So granted, I'll say maybe our BDC sales manager at that point knew it was me, so they didn't pursue as much follow-up as they should have. But I'll tell you, the follow-up that we had was a little weak. And it's definitely an opportunity for improvement. But, for example, if we're spending all this money on advertising, you're generating opportunities. I mean, we have all the analytics and metrics and we can see all of that as marketers now, which is so fascinating. It's great. But if you're not converting, then maybe, yes, these mystery shops, that becomes part of the eye and omni-channel, is actually putting yourself in the shoes of the consumer. Mm-hmm. Move yourself from the dealer's side of things, the desk, right? And put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. See what that actual transaction is like. See what kind of follow-up you receive. See if your team is being as proactive as possible. Are they listening to what the customer is respecting in terms of, or wanting? I shouldn't say respecting, but are they respecting the customer's wants in terms of, the customer says, hey, I want a text message. All right, well, is your dealer giving them a phone call and shooting them an email and not sending a text message? Or if they say, hey, I want a phone call, are they shooting them a text and sending them an email? Or are they doing all of them? I mean, if the customer is asking for these specific wants and needs, and then the team's failing to actually even adjust to what the customer wants, you're going to lose right then and there. But if there's no follow-up even being conducted, that's another issue, right? So
completely. Well, and that's where you said, you start talking about technologies and things like that. Well, if you've got the ability to, today, there's no reason why you can't understand whether it's an existing customer or prospect, how they want to be communicated with.
Right.
There's so many opportunities to gather that information, and that's, you've got to be able to do that. And I think one of the things too is understanding that real-time conversation.
Yes.
We're at a point now where, as a dealership, it's like, well, if I can't get this, somebody to communicate with me here, well, there's somebody else that will. And I think, again, because we're all so time starved, and maybe it's just that we're impatient because of everything. And, we're so used to everything at our fingertips and right away that, as a dealership, making sure that there is somebody that can communicate and truly communicate. I don't mean just a, answering service type of thing, because if I want to figure out what's going on and I want to buy it, 9:00 at night, because that's the only time that I have available.
Right.
Again, that's where as a dealership, you're respecting my time when I'm available, not necessarily when you are. So that's where we've got to think about, yes, the brick and mortar store is there to maybe ultimately come in and complete the purchase or do whatever, but understand that today real-time conversation is so important, and our time is so important, that I think that is one of the things too, from a metric standpoint, is once somebody has reached out, how quickly do you get back to them in real time with real information, not just canned responses?
Yeah, I think once again, because we're talking about this I and omnichannel for your sales, service, parts, whoever it is, management. If someone reaches out to you with questions, okay, it's not because they don't want their question answered. That's the silliest thing ever to think like that. Like if I reached out to someone and I said, "What's the towing capacity on this vehicle?" and you get back to me by saying, "Hey, that's a great choice," and you say the car's blue.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you didn't answer my question, first of all, which shows that you don't give a bleep about what I want. Right. Okay. I had to edit myself there. So that was my little beep, my curse, my expletive. But the whole thing becomes just that, with sales personnel. Let's just talk about sales personnel then at that point. If someone messages in and they want their questions answered, there really is no reason. And I get it, like logistically, sure. If you look at, well, we're not open 24 hours because we can't do that. I can't work my people like dogs, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I understand that. But if a customer does have a question at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, that's when that customer is active. Really, there should be someone there. There should be something in place that's a catch-all, but it has to be a little more tailored than just the canned, I'm sorry, we're not open. We'll get back to you in the morning. That's probably not the worst thing that can happen, because you're at least letting people know it's not your hours of operation. Hey, we'll get back to you in the morning. But the thing is, you better get back to them in the morning. And then the whole point of what I'm talking about now is, as salespeople, you really need to understand that when a customer asks these questions or this real-time conversation, have the conversation. Don't continue to do what we've fallen, into the same cycle, the trap, right? Someone submits a lead and you don't even respond to what they've asked. You just say, "When can you come in to see the vehicle?" Maybe I don't want to come in and see the vehicle. Maybe I don't want to do business with you. I just have a question. But the thing is, we've seen time and time again, and there's statistics out there that show that when you actually have conversations with people and you engage in them real time, that your engagement goes up. The people that ultimately come to your dealership buy cars. Okay, that's all we're looking for at the end of the day as dealers, is we just want to sell cars. But you know what that starts with? That starts with a conversation. That starts with an engagement. So why is it that every time someone submits a lead, you refuse to have the conversation with them and you just say, "Hi, John, get down here tomorrow to test drive this vehicle"? It's like, come on, guys.
Mm-hmm.
I digress.
Well, with what we're saying there too, you think about, though, it's, we don't have, you can't have one person or one group of people working 24 hours straight.
Right.
But is it worth? And that's one of the things you have to start looking at too, from, your analytics and understanding is, are there people who are wanting to find information between 8 and midnight? Is it worth, setting, obviously the chances of somebody between, midnight and 6 a.m. are pretty small, but, and again, I'll just take myself as an example, and I can't be unique in the fact that, I do those kind of things between 8 and midnight, because you work all day, then you've got family and kids, things you got to do and take care of when you get home. So when I sit down finally to be able to, start looking and understanding, hey, this is what I want to make happen, how much would it cost to have an additional salesperson or two, and a true salesperson, not just somebody that's there, randomly, just like you said, just throwing out canned responses that can answer questions. How many more thousands of dollars could that put in your, bottom line by doing that? And if you see it, now all of a sudden too, we start talking about unique value proposition. Well, we're the only dealership that, will answer your question.
Can't sleep. We can't either.
Yeah. We're here for, we respect your time. We understand that not everybody can shop between 10 a.m. or 6 a.m., 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. or whatever.
Right.
And or that, hey, we understand you don't want to waste your entire Saturday sitting up here at the dealership for 8 hours to try to get something done. We respect your time. Let us, work you through. Well, now that's a true value proposition.
Absolutely.
And then all the other things that you can start adding on to it in terms of some additional, value props of, like, with the lifetime powertrain that we do or things like that. Now all of a sudden you've got all of this going for you. And now really it means something, because, you actually, I go, well, God, they really value my time and all these other things. There must be some true value in the other things they're doing as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. You know, one of the things that, and I just, like we said, we both like to teach, right? And I guess teaching is kind of showing true mastery of something, and I'm by no means a master, but the whole idea becomes this. I guess I like to teach and from our experiences. All right, so the dealership experiences. So I'll preface this with, you know, I would never recommend or say something to dealers or someone that I haven't personally tried myself. You know, I can't do that. So for that whole idea of a value proposition. All right, here's something that we have as an opportunity for improvement. So at our stores, we've launched our digital retailing tools, okay? And we've called them the Fast Pass. It's not unique, all right? You can go on Google Fast Pass. You'll see a lot of different dealers. I think even Disney has their Fast Pass, okay? So it's really not special. What that's done is it's just taken that technology that we've had and branded it as the Fast Pass.
Mm-hmm.
But Troy, I'm going to ask you, when I say Fast Pass, I mean, what does that even mean to you? What does it mean?
Well, in my mind, just hearing that real quickly, it's getting me from one point to the other quickly.
Okay, so that's good. So we're saying, hey, you're going to save time when you start your deal online or when you conduct a lot of the car buying process online, which is what we want to get across. But then if we're talking about an actual value proposition, now every dealer can say that, okay? Every dealer that's adopted digital retailing can say that. So once again, what makes your dealership special? So the needle has moved due to COVID, right? Originally it was, my dealer has the largest inventory, ha ha ha. I'll give you, whatever, $3,000 above KBB book value for your trade, and we're gonna sell so many cars. Or, we're family owned and operated since Jesus days, like Jesus bought his car here. Like, guys. So now what's happened is you need to get away from that, and you even need to get away from, or at least take advantage of, or go above and beyond this whole save time at the dealership thing, okay? Because, and I'll give you an example. I heard this from Brian Patch. He's someone I look up to. Brian Patch has this group. I don't know what the automotive group is, but they've trademarked this. Their slogan is one person, 1 hour, one person, one price, 1 hour, okay? So the whole idea behind that, Troy, is that when you transact at this dealership, you're going to work with one person the whole entire time you're there, which I think is kick-ass, okay? Mm-hmm. So now you have one point of contact the whole time. You're going to get one price. Whatever price you see online is going to be the price that you're going to get at the store. It's going to be the price, wherever you go. That is the price, 1 hour. Your transaction will be done within 1 hour, okay? And then I think the end of the slogan is like changing car buying. Honestly, yeah, if you could get me one person for the whole time, you give me one price, you're that transparent, and you get me in and out in 1 hour, you just changed the car buying process. And you did it like incredibly. Mm-hmm. So here we are, Nielsen Automotive Group, still stuck with Fast Pass, save time when you start online. I do challenge other dealers, and I'm even challenging our dealership now. I mean, it's how do we take it to the next level and come up with a value proposition or brand promise that then also ties into that I and Omnichannel. How are people that are underneath that Omnichannel umbrella of marketing that we're doing, how are they upholding the brand promise, right? It's just what you talked about. Mm-hmm. But, it's kind of like because of COVID, the digital retailing adoption was expedited. And not a majority. I think, we talked to someone at Roadster and there's only 40% of dealers that have digital retailing tools, but that's, in general. I think for FCA or Stellantis now, I think it's 90-something% of dealers have adopted digital retailing tools, right? So we have 3 Stellantis stores, but across the business centers and all of that, now it's 90% adoption. So even if we focused on them, we're now competing with 90% of the population that can also say save time online. What sets us apart, right?
Completely.
So that's me off my soapbox.
Again, it's one of those things, and that's why I say it really requires, a lot of thought and it's not something you just, haphazardly throw out there or, kind of flippantly go, okay, well, let's do this. Yeah, well, that makes us different. And I think that's the key is unique value proposition. That word unique means one of a kind. That there aren't 15, 20, 30, 90% right. of the other people out doing the same thing.
Right.
And I think too, as we look at the digital side and digital retailing, it's still possible. I think the key is too, there is, you can have bad in-person service and experience as well as bad digital, so it's really understanding, again, all of those things and making sure that the digital side is a tool,
Right.
but not become a crutch.
Right. Here's a fun one. So we had on our episode, and I'm laughing because it was very funny. We had a great conversation on our episode about Matt bringing up this analogy, social listening. And he
Yes.
brought up this hard, oh my goodness, he brought up this hard analogy about, a party and like, hey, is this social listening? And you and I at the end were laughing because we talk about consummating a car deal. Yeah, it was a funny one. And so here's another analogy in that same realm. It's like a dating app. Okay. So I'm a millennial. Millennials, at this point are doomed to the confines of Bumble and Tinder and all these different things. And, it's very hard in COVID times, but here you are where you have the technology, right? You're swiping on profiles, left, right, hoping for that match. There's the technology. And then you show up on the date actually, and the person's completely different than what they showed in their profile. Like you were catfished galore.
You mean you can fake it?
Right? But here's the thing. So talk about that or look at it from that perspective and have a little chuckle about it, but look at it from that perspective of the dealership experience. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all the technology, you're doing everything right online. And then when the person gets to the dealership, catfished, so it's kind of like, how are you connecting everything? And a lot of it comes down to the personnel and where they fit in the whole experience, so.
I guess what we'd say, it's simple, just not easy.
That's right. That's right.
So that's why that people need people like us to help it make them a little bit easier. Maybe not easy, but easier, right?
I think that's safe to say. Yes, it would be easier. And people are capable of doing this. Everyone, if you really just thought about it, right? And dealers and everyone at a dealership is capable of coming up with something, whether it's a brand promise, whether it's, a better way of doing things. That's because they're boots on the ground. They can observe what's currently happening. So it's really not rocket science. It's simple, but not easy.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole thing is this: if you just took the time, dealers,
that is the key. It's just taking that time and investing that time. And also I would say, not, as a dealer, again, having my own business for many years.
Yeah.
You can't look at it that everything. You've got to be open to, in a situation like this where you've got a team, you want to take input from everybody
Absolutely.
on that team.
Absolutely.
Because there may be it may just be one key little idea that one of your salespeople or somebody in the service department comes up with that, completely revolutionizes what you're doing. And by having everybody working together, giving their ideas and being bought in, it fosters a great culture within your company. But it also, every idea, when you can start brainstorming and getting multiple points of view from something, you end up having a much better solution and result to what you're doing. So I think that's the key there, because we all get so busy, everybody's so doing, that sometimes, and this is something that we've told dealers too, is you just got to stop and step back and think a little bit and plan a little bit. And what was the old saying that Abe Lincoln, give me 4 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 3 sharpening my axe. That, whether he said that or not, I don't know, but I think that's where I saw. I think that's who I saw it.
Good.
That's what the internet.
That's what they say.
So it's got to be true. But no matter who said it, the concept is the same. It's like, if you put time into preparation and making sure that you're doing everything right, the execution becomes infinitely less arduous, and the results end up, from what I've seen over the last 20 plus years, being better.
Right.
Versus, again, having clients that they want to jump in midstream, and then you're like, well, what is our purpose? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish?
Take a step back, just like you said. Yep.
So have we solved all of the problems of the world, auto industry, anything else that we've left out here today?
Listen, I think we have a great start. Let's say this: we've laid the foundation, right? And it really is just take it back to basics. Really look at it as a matter of how can I improve my existing processes, utilizing the technology. Maybe there are some new technology tools that I can adopt, but guys, before you adopt them, make sure you have a process in place. Make sure that your staff is educated on the technology. Like I said, it's an opportunity for improvement here at the Nielsen Automotive Group, but we take it very seriously because we know once our people are educated, they become that more dangerous, right? They are then able to close these deals. They're able to interact with customers the way that customer wants to be interacted with. And ultimately all that does is impact or positively impact our bottom line. So I wish I can share that same sentiment to everyone out there.
Well, that's what you're doing. So because we have at least 30 or 40 million viewers here.
There you go.
On our fourth or fifth episode. So
one day, man, that's it. I think you will. I think you will.
It's the nonstop and all. It's the relationship development that I'm telling you is what I see across the board. Relationships with partners and people and just everything is where we have to look ultimately, because again, it's people interacting with people,
right?
And there happens to be a lot of commodities that we're selling to each other, but it's really the people that make the difference. So with that, we're going to wrap up here. Colin, thank you so much. It's going to get to a point where we're going to have to, once a month, we'll have to find a lot of new topics to talk about.
You're like an old friend, Troy.
Yeah. We've known each other now about a month, and I feel like, that we could go back and start talking about, how we knew each other 30 years ago. So
we'll just have to make up a really good story. And I found a time machine or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, hey, thank you so very much for having me on. I wish you much success with the podcast. I think it's great what you're doing. Please, by all means, have David O'Brien on, because I think you guys are going to get a lot of.
I will reach out to him next.
Yeah.
So there, we're trying, and again, that's my whole goal is to get as many people with different experiences and different ideas to get out there and share.
Yeah,
that's what this is all about.
Awesome.
I want to. Like you said, educating people. I love coaching and teaching and doing all that kind of thing. So this is where
you're doing well.
I hope to, continue value. Again, check out the Experience Marketing podcast as well. Cause
thank you. Thank you.
I will. And again, I will make sure that, that people can find it when I get this done. I will wrap up and make sure that there are links to all of that, because that's how we work together. It's, and this is one of the, I'll end it here, but Lori Foster, who I had on here just about a week or so ago. Better together is her hashtag. And I think that is, if we focus on that and working together for each other, seeing what we can do for the other person, not so much for ourselves, we will be amazed at what comes back our way, both on a, personal and professional level, and how it'll affect our bottom line. So with that, we will wrap it up. Thank you so much, Colin, and we will see you soon.
You got it. Thanks.